Imagine walking into a space where you feel instantly seen, welcomed, and understood, not because of the decor or the lighting, but because of the way someone chose to show up for you. That, at its core, is the hospitality mindset. It's not about networking events or handing out just business cards. It's about presence, curiosity, and generosity. The kind that opens doors across industries, roles, and even entire careers. Welcome back, listeners, to another interesting episode on the BizBlend Podcast. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and today we are joined by someone who has lived and led this mindset at the highest levels, Carlee Wolfe. With more than 2 decades shaping talent, culture, and transformation for global brands like Under Armour, Hyatt Hotels, Apollo Education Group, and even the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee, Kali brings a wealth of insight into what happens when strategy turns into behavior that truly sticks. So, friends, listeners, lean in with me because if you're leading a team or serving clients or navigating change, today's conversation may just shift how you think about connection at work. So, Kali, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm very excited to be here as well.
Super, super. Okay, so Kali, let's try to understand. Although I just kind of touched down a bit in the intro, but um, when you talk about the hospitality mindset, what does that mean to you beyond the traditional idea of customer service?
hmm Yeah, I think, the hospitality mindset goes into this sort of like deep connection of being seen, of being cared for, of being supported in ways that go beyond perhaps the traditional sense of what everyone may think of. And I think it's important to distinguish, we'll call maybe like the tactical delivery of expectations, right? Like think of, and I'm sure we've all been here, like think of going to an event. Of course, you expect you can check in, right, on time. Of course, you expect that, the sessions or the experience that you have is delivered, for what you paid for what was marketed. But I think the hospitality mindset goes beyond that. It goes into who is showing up for us, right? Who is showing up in this moment, and how do we see them beyond, like, the delivery that we've committed? So let's keep with the event. Let's say you're going to a networking event, right? So you're committed to the meeting new people and learning new things. But what if that networking event also had a little bit of a sparkle around, when you checked in, they knew a little bit about you, about where you worked, about what you were looking to learn. And what if your name tag also said a little bit of something like that? And what about if at lunch you didn't even put in an allergy requirement that you had, and they had a meal set for you with your name on it because they found that, in research in other events that they've run in other places that you've been. So I'm just naming a few things that really get down to that, like being seen, being understood who the individual is, providing that care that goes beyond just the base expectation that I think we all expect when we're, engaging in an experience.
Hmm. That is interesting. Uh, and um I think first of all, I must say that you know uh, how often we sometimes underestimate the power of just being present, and I think uh, it's the smallest shift in behavior that creates the biggest kind of effect or ripple in there.
Absolutely. Well, I love what you said about being present. I think being present allows us to have that connection, to see into and be in a connected moment, right?
Hmm.
Even if we think about the conversation we're having right now, right? Hearing you and being with you and picking up on a subtle cue of a question or an inquiry.
Mhm.
That is about being seen and heard and understood versus like, "Hey, I heard what you had to say, like, let's move to the next question someone might have or that I have, because 'cause
Yeah.
you're enabling and, going deeper and connecting and getting to something really important." So I love that point that you just brought up.
Totally, totally. And we often talk about active conversations or passive conversations, or keeping that eye contact, or um, uh, hearing something that the other person mentions, and then repeating it back, and sharing your opinions or your thoughts on that. So it kind of really sometimes becomes the make or break.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Well, and I can give an example. Like I think about, I work in the hospitality industry, and one of the greatest things that I learned when I started working was that hotels at the surface level, right? If you're just a guest or a consumer or a traveler, right? You might see it as like, hey, I have a place to go. I have a place to stay. It's like it could feel or seem on the surface as a transactional space.
Mhm.
It goes so much deeper than that, and not only the experience, but what the service looks like when you're there. And the biggest learning that I had, and I was so thankful for someone that shared this with me, is they were describing hotels as really, it's sort of like, think about someone staying there. It's like their home for the night or for the week or the day. And as humans, we have things that happen in our lives every single day, right? We have celebrations like weddings, birthdays, anniversaries. We have things that are difficult. We get sick, maybe someone passes away, just to kind of name two extremes. But these are the things that people bring to hotels, whether it's they're there for those purposes, maybe something happens while they're at the hotel, for example, getting sick. And to your point about that, like active, passive listening, think
Mhm.
of an experience if you're going to stay somewhere, that if you put that mindset on of, "Okay, this is someone's home for the day, for the night. Oh, they're not feeling well. Like, what can I do to help them out?" Even if it's something as simple to ask, like, "Hey, do you need anything?"
Yeah.
And or providing things that might be on hand to help support, like, "Here's, I just happen to have a cough drop at the front desk. Here's something for you." Right? And I think that's the difference when we talk about hospitality mindset, is really kind of leaning into what am I seeing, hearing, experience with this person or these group of people that are with me, where I can kind of go into service mode and really see what they're here for. So I share that nugget of learning for me in hospitality, but I share that also in encouraging others of whether it's their businesses or the places that they serve. How do you beyond that? Like what are folks there to engage with or experience, and how do you take it to the next level? How do you turn your hotel room into the mindset of this is their home for the day?
Mm. Mm. And if I were a guest and if I get a surprise care package and I'm not feeling well, I would be so, I mean, that's exactly the most striking memory that's going to be left within me. And I would like to share with other people and, recommend that, this particular hotel or uh, homestay that was really, really warm and welcoming and very caring. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we're using this right as examples. And you mentioned care package, and I think it could also be as something as simple as when you see the person the next day, like, hey, how are you feeling? I know you weren't feeling well yesterday. I hope you're doing better. Where are you headed? Is there anywhere I can help point you in a direction to? Right. So these little and big moments truly matter. And I give that example too to say, because on one hand you could say, oh, a care package costs money. That might be a barrier to, you know, delivering on that true care. But there's so many other ways to do that. And even just like as I, gave that example, even just kind of having that check-in, that memory of the how can I help, or being proactive of, hey, there's a pharmacy around the corner. I didn't know if you knew that, but that might, provide some things that you might need. By offering that without the person asking, that's seeing them and seeing the moment and the support that they need. So there's a range of what you can do to bring that mindset to life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes so much sense, Carly. And talking about your journey, I mean, you have worked across different sectors, of course, hospitality, and then sports, retail, education. Um, uh, Absolutely, all of them, like, they are like so much front facing, people facing.
Mhm.
Mm. How did this mindset translate across these industries, Kali? I mean, did it look the same throughout, or did you adapt it to fit the culture?
Mm. I love that question because I imagine a lot of folks listening are across many, many different industries. I think it comes down to the customer, right? Sometimes we have customers that are direct facing. So for example, in retail, people do come in stores,
Mm.
they might call and they might need something. But also in retail, you might just have an online experience, right? Something that you want to go purchase a pair of shoes. How do I go on and do that? So in today's customer engagement, it's important to really understand who your customer and consumer is and where can you provide. I mean, in this case, we're using like hospitality mindset as the conversation point. How do you put that hat on and say, what does the consumer customer look, feel, and sound like when they're being seen in these different experiences? So for example, when you come in the store, it might be a matter of what does your greeting sound like? Are you greeting them? Are you supporting them in this shopping experience or in helping them uncover what they need, uh, or to support their needs of why they've even come into the store? But when you're online, maybe it's more of the user experience of how you're navigating the site. Is it easy for people to find what they need? Are we using the insights that we have from that customer or consumer to then maybe serve them up the clothing or attire that they didn't know that they needed, but then once it was there, they're like, "Oh, this fits my need." So I think that that's just one example because I think you could easily take retail and say, "Oh, great, folks are in store." But I think that mindset of how you're caring for folks, how you're seeing them, and how you're meeting the needs really extends into all of those touch points. So that's in, retail, but I think same thing in sport. There's a huge component of that hospitality mindset in sport. How are you caring for the athlete? The
Mhm.
athlete is coming to the table to train in such individual ways, right? Your training need might be different than my training need. In order to see that, I have to see that, right? Understand who you are, what you're trying to achieve, what have been your challenges, how do we work through those together? So that was just pulling on those two industries, but I think it really comes down to who's your customer or consumer, and how can you meet them where they are and deliver on experiences that not only meet their basic needs, but go beyond where you can demonstrate that you see them?
Of course, of course, of course. And with this, I would also like to bring in a different aspect. Now, Kali, some might argue that, especially in today's fast-paced, um, like metrics-driven, numbers-driven world, being overly focused on hospitality, it could slow you down or even distract from hard business goals. Or it may even risk burnout, in professionals who are engaging. How do you respond to this?
Mhm. There's two angles to this. One thing that you brought up that I believe is super important at the end is you mentioned burnout. So
Mhm.
on the employee side, if we don't provide some sort of support and care for folks in the fast moving world, they're not going to have an opportunity to really be their best.
Mhm.
And so I think it's even more important at the pace of change, the pace of the world, and the pace of work to be mindful of those individual needs, their support, to continue to help them be great performers, great people to work with in their jobs. I think
Mm.
the other thing that you're asking me is on the delivery front, so on the customer side of things. Part of what is great about moving fast is that we have a lot of tools and resources at our hands to be able to move quickly. I would then say, how are you also using those tools and resources to understand the full experience of where you connect with customers and consumers? And then how do you use that, whether so for example, if it's research or insight, how are you using that to meet people where they are to also deliver quickly? So I think it goes hand in hand. I don't think speed has to move while losing the wraparound of seeing and understanding who your consumer and customer is. I think it's using that same mindset of how you're able to move quickly to also leverage things like research, insight, tooling to meet people where they are. I think it's at the core of what we're talking about. How do you bring that the being seen mindset to also the solution of moving fast but still meeting your customer and consumer where they are?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that it makes sense. And uh, I think you really brought out a balance in here because it's kind of very refreshing to see how a mindset which is rooted in generosity, it doesn't mean abandoning performance, and
Correct.
it's actually like a motivator or an accelerator. So
Absolutely.
it's another very interesting, word that you use. You say it's not about schmoozing, but about intention and generosity. So, how do you guide, help leaders and professionals avoid crossing into performative networking?
Mm,
That doesn't feel like genuine or authentic.
mm. The term performative networking, I think, is key. I you know, I think I'd love for I always go to I kind of put people in a place of, like, think about the first time you meet somebody.
Mhm.
You extend that hand, you shake your hand, "Hey, I'm Carly. This is who I am. This is where I'm from. This is what I do." And I give space for the other person to tell their part of the story. And I think it is so telling the moment after that of where the conversation goes, right? To be able to extend beyond who's Carly at the surface level versus who is Carly and what do I want to know in that moment and what can we exchange that's powerful for both of us. And I think that that to me is the difference between performative and connecting, right? To engage to understand versus to engage to check a box. And I go back to, I'm sure we've all had those experiences. I think of networking events, right? You're like, "Hey, I'm so and so." And someone immediately hands you a business card. They're like, "I'd love to do business with you. I'll see you around." And you're like, "I don't actually know what your business is or why you think I care about it or what you're in for." And I think that is a great example of the transaction versus the, engagement of being able to understand one another, where one another can provide value, support, and even if there isn't a natural connection of, "Hey, we can do business here," but it's just a matter of, "I've learned something from you. It was great to connect with you, and maybe we don't have something now, but I'm gonna keep you in mind." That to me is the difference between transactional versus connected, is being in that moment, being in that conversation, even if it still is short, but to treat that, connection with the respect and opportunity and joy that it could bring.
And that really makes it obvious. Makes it very obvious. And are there any practical signs someone can look for in themselves to check that, am I really showing up with presence or I'm just, going through the motions?
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
I love that question. I think the question might be, where are my senses in this moment? Am I hearing what this person is seeing? Do I see them? Do I feel the connection of what we're both trying to learn from one another in this moment? Those are just examples. Those are things that I would be looking for, but I think the question is, how are you engaging your senses to tune in to the moment that you are connecting in?
Hmm. I think once again it comes back to presence.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think so much comes back to presence. Are you there? Are you in the conversation? And here's like a fun one to think about. Because listen, we've all been there. I'm not pretending that I'm the most present person all of the time. I do try to engage best I can, but sometimes things happen, right? Maybe you've had a long day at work. Something is stressful on your mind.
Mm.
You can feel that difference, right? You can feel the shift between I am here and with this person or this moment, or I'm sort of just here. I'm here and I'm making it. We're talking, but really I got other things going on. And that's fine. It's fine to acknowledge, and but the reason why I bring that up here is because 'cause you're asking, like, how do you know you're with someone or not with your someone? So I think hopefully these are examples where people can start to relate of what is that difference. Perhaps the question to follow is, like, what's the value of being present? And I go back to, think of as we're sitting here for folks to kinda, like, think about those moments of when they're in the moment or where they're checked out, what what do you gain when those shifts happen? For me, I think it's a greater sense of feeling that I have in that moment. Like, I feel like I'm spending time with something that matters to me.
Mm.
Sometimes I get extra insight out of it, right? I'm asking that one extra question. I'm thinking a little bit harder about the offering someone has provided to me. Maybe I've learned in learning and connecting, I now see other opportunities where we can partner together, where I can connect them out too, things that I can take back to work. So for me, it also goes to that value of it's important to be connected because you're in it. That's where you're spending the time at that moment. How do you really use the space and time for something that also fuels you?
True, true. That's a really grounding way to look at it because it is true. We cannot. I sometimes, during some podcasts, I try to be present as much as possible, but that one um, thought or some random, out of the blue, uh, thing happens, and I kind of get distracted, and sometimes it's really difficult to kind of maintain that focus or presence. But yeah, somehow
Absolutely.
we all manage at the end of the.
Well, for sure. And as you're sharing that, I think about, well, one, you're human. So we all have that. We have that shared experience. Um, and back to like, why is it important? Like when you have those moments, you probably are thinking, gosh, I could have, if I had stuck with this, I probably could have thought of it or gone deeper on the question, or we could have engaged another way. And I'm not saying, I'm just bringing that up just as like a shared experience because I have those moments, moments for sure as well. Um, And you and I have been talking about, like, where is the connection or what's the value for the person, like, from a first person point of view, like, "Hey, this is what's important for me." But I think on the opposite side, I think we've all been with people who aren't engaged with us and the feeling that we're left with. And so if nothing else, it's, what are the impressions that we're leaving with other people? And I use the term impressions intently in that, like, you and I on this conversation, really, it's from a business point of view. And so when we are connecting with people, those are little micro moments where we get to leave impressions with people. Impressions for our network, impressions for our customers, impressions for the people that we work with, right? And sometimes we get more impression moments than others.
Mhm.
And I think this is what also folds into the importance of care and support and seeing others, right? We are just in work, we get to connect all the time. Or not very often, but how are you using all of those opportunities in the best way possible? Even if it's just to start with, I wanna have a good connection because we're both people that are connecting in this world, and I wanna have us both feel good leaving this, all the way up to, I have a business transaction and a deal that I wanna continue to pursue with this interaction. But I'm just bringing it back around to the sense of business and where we've been starting with hospitality, why it matters, but there's a human part of it, there's a business part of it, but I challenge people to think about these as when you have these interactions and connection times, how are using them in the best way possible and staying, as you said, present.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Brilliant, brilliant, Carly. So, of course, it's a ritual. I have to ask you for our listeners, they would like to connect with you and explore all the resources that you're providing and the wonderful wisdom. What would be the easiest way?
Yeah, I love the question, appreciate it. The best way for folks to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I'm super open to connecting and chatting and, welcome the conversation.
Superb, superb. I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes for all of you listeners. And Kali, thank you so much for putting limelight on this aspect, and how useful and fruitful, purposeful can be hospitality mindset. And I think it's a very obvious that it is not reserved for hotels or restaurants or guest services. It's a way of being, one that provides connection, um invites growth, and then also leaves people better than we found them. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me to have the conversation. If we can leave our businesses in a better place and the world in a better place, I think we're all good for it. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Oh, brilliant. And to all the listeners out there, I hope you carry this question into your week or weekend. How can I show up with hospitality in my next interaction? Because the truth is, the doors it may open might surprise you. With that, I conclude this episode of BizBlend. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.